This is part of the Top in Fiction Summit 2026, which is the brainchild of the amazing Erica Drayton, who's put together this massive list of Substack serial writers to read their work all over the weekend. There's a whole load of stuff yesterday. There's more today. I think I'm kicking it off today, even though it's like 4 p.m. in the UK. So time zones are confusing, and there's more tomorrow. So yeah, do take a look up Top in Fiction if you want to see the full list of what's going on. Yeah, I'm Simon K. Jones, just in case anyone's watching this who doesn't know that. I write science fiction, fantasy, crime fiction. I've been writing a strange mix for a while. You can find me at simonkjones.substack.com, or if you're watching this live, you can click on my name thereabouts. I'm going to be reading a story called The Koth, which is part of my kind of big ongoing serial called Tales from the Triverse that I've been writing since 2021 and publishing weekly chapters. It's actually going to be finishing, like the whole serial is wrapping up in a couple of weeks, which I'm not handling it well, but I'll be fine. Anyway, this chapter is from way back at the start, so it's from 2021. Goes a while back. So yeah, I'm going to read this. Be about sort of 15 minutes, I think. If anyone's got any questions, I'll keep an eye on the chat for afterwards. But during the reading, I'm just going to focus on doing that. So yeah, thank you everyone for showing up. And yeah, this is The Koth, part of Tales from the Triverse. So here we go. London, July 1972. The sweat soaked into Callahan's collar as he stood in line. He loosened his tie just a fraction. The waitress gave him a toothy smile, the styrofoam cups already melting into the tea. He slid the change across the counter. Nodding his thanks, he pushed the cup and saucer's door open with his shoulder. The street roared, the air thick and stinking. London, the kingdom of Great Britain's shining jewel, as long as you didn't think about the fumes, or the crime, or the filth. A tram rattled past, packed with commuters on their way to work. Somewhere beneath his feet, the trains would be running on their endless circuits. Between the concrete and marble and brass walls high above, an airship blocked his view of the sky as it drifted slowly on its moorings. Dodging a steam vent, he crossed the street to where Yannick waited in the car. One of the many perks of being in the force, your own automobile. Callahan couldn't deny that it had been one of the reasons he joined the police. Only the super rich in the authorities had cars, and he wasn't going to be super rich, not in this life. Yannick pushed the passenger door open from the inside. Callahan lowered himself into the seat carefully and passed one of the cups to the older detective. "You're a lifesaver," Yannick said, blowing gently on the tea. "Shift doesn't start until the tea goes down." Callahan always admired Yannick's ability to drink painfully hot liquid. Maybe it was a skill that came with age. "Only 9 hours left, John." Yannick took a sip, assessed it like it was a fine wine, and sighed contentedly. Callahan brought the cup to his lips and immediately burned himself. "Shit," he said, spilling some onto his lap. He grinned at Yannick. "Heard this the other day. A Koth, an Ain Fa, and a robot walk into a bar. The barman asks them what they want. The Koth eats the barman, the Ain Fa hides in the rafters, and the robot falls over and his battery falls out." They sipped their teas. Another tram went past, in the opposite direction to the earlier one. A couple of rickshaws, Callahan catching a glimpse of their drivers, pedalling furiously. The city was already wide awake on its way to work. The usual haze hovered above the street, lingering between the buildings. He could smell it. Yannick grunted. "It's not funny." "No, I know. I heard it off Holland." "Well, that explains it." They sat quietly, observing the street, sipping their drinks. There was the blast of a horn somewhere in the distance, from the direction of the river, pulling Callahan back to the moment. "Zara was telling me about the East End slums last night," he said. He liked relaying information from his fiancée to Yannick in the mornings. Her activism made him feel like a better person by proxy. "Did you know it's something like 40% Palanese occupancy now? Mostly Ain Fa." Yannick snorted and looked out the car window. "Why would they want to come here?" "Persecution?" Not sure. Someone knows more about it than me, but sounds like Palanor isn't all it's cracked up to be. They've certainly got their issues, Yannick said, his soft laugh turning into a cough. Haven't we all? Imagine having actual magic, though. All the good you could do, click your fingers and fix the world. Yannick laughed more and clapped Callahan on the shoulder with amusement, spilling yet more of his drink. You're a dreamer, Callahan, and I like that, but you got a lot to learn. They got their magic, the Max Earthers got their spaceships, and we got... He waved his hand vaguely at the street beyond the windscreen. We got a smog-filled shithole. Callahan said nothing, observing only Yannick's unfailing ability to turn any discussion into a lament for the state of the world. The man was in his 50s. He'd been in the force for his whole life and was on the cusp of retiring, with only 6 months left until he'd get his full pension. He underestimated himself, but nothing Callahan said could break through the cynicism. As if realizing he'd torpedoed the conversation before it got started, Yannick cleared his throat. How is Zara doing anyway? She's still with the local council? Fighting the good fight, Callahan nodded. Feels to me like she's trying to turn back the ocean, but it makes her happy, trying to help people. That's because you're both in your 20s, Yannick said. You'll get over it. He finished the tea, crushed the cup and stuffed it into the door's compartment, alongside the previous month's supply. The radio crackled, drawing both their attention. Control to all units, domestic disturbance reported at 344 Sterling Court, E13, over. Callahan glanced sideways at Yannick. What do you say? Shall we? Not really our remit, Callahan. It's just around the corner. We'll be there in 2 minutes. Not going to be anyone else closer. What do you say? For old time's sake? Turning the keys in the ignition, Yannick shrugged. Sod it. Let's go. Can pretend we're back in my glory days. Pouring his half-drunk tea out of the window, Callahan grinned. I thought he didn't have any of those. The car jerked away from the pavement, belching smoke from the exhaust on its roof. Callahan gripped onto the armrest as Yannick pushed them up through the gears, the engine thrumming away in the back. Yannick picked up the radio transmitter with one hand, the cord unwinding from the center console. Control receiving Sierra Delta Charlie 3, over. Sierra Delta Charlie 3, go ahead, over. En route to E13. Transit 2 minutes, over. Sierra Delta Charlie 3, acknowledge that 999 caller reported sounds of physical distress. Exercise caution, over. All received, control, 90 seconds. Out. Reaching into his jacket's inside pocket, Callahan took out his badge and looped it around his neck. The feel of it, the metal of the Specialist Dimensional Command emblem, the leather of the mount, gave him power. It filled him with confidence, reminding him of everything he'd done to reach Detective Constable. Everything he was going to do next. After we wrap this up, what do you say we get back on that missing person case? Whatever you say, partner, Yannick said, swerving the car between two trams. Though I still don't see a way forward with it. We'll find something. Callahan was a dog chasing trams once he had a case. Unsolved wasn't in his vocabulary. They turned the corner into Sterling Road, part of a larger estate that mixed small, 2-story terraced housing with an incongruous council tower block. The grass on the roadside was unkempt, overgrown and strewn with litter. A children's play park sat rusted and empty. Yannick parked the car and they climbed out. The city mumbled in the distance, the twisting pipes of downtown lifting above the rooftops like a metal leviathan, but Sterling Road was quiet. The sound of a door slamming echoed across the street. Friendly neighborhood, Yannick murmured. Where is everyone? Guess they knew the fuzz was coming. Callahan straightened his tie. Let's go find 344 Sterling Court. He pointed at a tower block, sat halfway along the street, sandwiched awkwardly between much shorter terraces. I bet you 50 quid it's up there. That's a bet I'd be losing, Yannick said, fixing his truncheon to his belt. Not worn this for a while. Like riding a bike, Callahan smiled. Let's go. Sterling Road gave the impression of being from another time, like wandering the ruined walls of a Roman town, except people still lived here. London surrounded it, but Sterling Road was its own little pocket universe. Callahan and Yannick walked the cracked pavement until they reached the tower, an anonymous off-white concrete slab affair. The entrance door was broken on its hinges, so they ignored the buzzer and headed straight for the stairwell. Never use the lifts in these places, Yannick said. Trust me. Piss and vomit were the overriding sensations as Callahan climbed the steps, wrinkling his nose against the odour. The stairwell wrapped around on itself, emerging each time into a long outer balcony from which each of the flats could be accessed. The third floor was as deserted as the street, the edges of the walkways decorated with discarded cans and food wrappers and used condoms. Glancing out across the city, Callahan could see all the way to the Isle of Dogs and its spread of hugely tall buildings, each topped with an air dock. Somewhere further south was the river and the portal station, but the view was blocked by a mix of smog and construction cranes. Here it is, Callahan said. Flat 344. He raised his eyebrows at Yannick, who nodded confirmation. Anyone there? Callahan called, knocking twice. This is the police. There was no response. He knocked again. Seems pretty quiet, Yannick said, watching the walkway. Maybe this is the wrong place. Control said physical distress. I think we need to go in and check it out. Callahan peered into the flat's 2 small windows, but the curtains were drawn. I'll go first, Yannick said, one hand on his truncheon and the other on the doorknob. Come on, Callahan said. You're 6 months off retirement. That's just asking for trouble. He gently pushed Yannick aside. Watch my back. On 3. 1. 2. 3. Throwing his shoulder against the door, Callahan felt it give under his weight, though it didn't quite open. He backed up a step and went again, harder, convinced it would break at either the hinges or the lock. He was right, and the battered, tired door fell into the flat. Callahan almost tumbled in with it, but was able to adjust his footing just in time, moving into a low stance as he surveyed the dim, yellowed room, his own baton in his hand. There was an odd stench he didn't recognise. He barely had time to notice the upturned and smashed furniture, the dents in the walls, and the torn carpet before something long and black and sharp whipped out and seized him around the ankle. With a cry, he was yanked into the room and thrown against the far wall. He felt it as a couple of ribs snapped under the impact. Before he hit the floor, he was flung again into the opposite wall, the back of his head colliding with a doorframe. A huge figure, bigger than it seemed could reasonably fit into the small flat, pinned him there, its body obsidian black, glassy and sharp, glinting in the light from the doorway, 2 horns atop its head and a long, protruding snout on its face. Its eyes were red. It roared with a senseless fury, then decapitated John Callahan and threw his head at the window, smashing the glass. With another roar, it followed suit and leaped through, cracking the frame and parts of the wall. Detective Constable Yannick Clark, 6 months from retirement, watched the Koth leap off the balcony. He heard it crunch to the tarmac below, heard its booming footsteps as it ran. He breathed in, breathed out. In. Out. His hand was still on his truncheon. The lifeless eyes of Callahan stared up at him from where his head nestled amongst the piss and vomit. And that's that. Thank you for listening, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that. Bit of a twisty turn to that one. So yeah, this is like basically the first chapter of Tales from the Triverse. And then the story goes off in all sorts of crazy directions. And part of the fun of this opening chapter was I intended to make it seem like Callahan was basically going to be the protagonist and the lead detective in the whole serial. And then very abruptly, he clearly is not. And the rest of the story is kind of a mixture of kind of police procedural, but with this kind of fantasy twist, with various different cases and a kind of anthology story. But then bubbling in the background is what the kind of fallout from what happened to Callahan and how everyone else deals with that, and some larger ramifications that come to be. But yeah, thank you for listening, and thanks for the comments coming in. Really appreciate that. Any questions or anything, stick them down in the chat. I'm going to be here for a little bit more. But I also wanted just to say that that reading is just one that's happening today. There's a whole load more coming up. If you look at the Top in Fiction channel on Substack, you'll find like a list of what's going on. Next up, in fact, let me just get this right. So next up is CB Mason, who's going to be reading The Story Seeker and Her Rooted Friend. So yeah, if you're not following CB Mason already, just give them a little search on Substack, follow them, and then when they start their live stream, you should get a notification for that. Have to say, I've not taken part in a big organized live stream quite like this one before, so it's been a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, brilliant stuff, and yeah, thanks to Erica for putting this all together. It's been a lot of fun. I think we should probably do more readings. They're nice. They're good stuff. What have we got? Oh yeah, Daniel O'Donnell. Hi, Daniel. Daniel's been reading Triverse for a while. Yeah, he's a lot further down the story than this particular chapter. Oh, and Mike. Hello, Mike. Mike Miller has been reading my stuff for many years and is greatly appreciated. Really good. Terry, did I detect hints of a Lovecraftian influence there? Possibly. I mean, I'm sort of familiar with Lovecraft stuff in the way that everyone is, in a sort of vague sense, but I'm not very familiar with his actual writing. So I think my understanding of Lovecraft is from a sort of design perspective when it's shown up in other stuff. So yeah, some of the visuals might be there, but yeah, I wouldn't claim to be a particularly knowledgeable on Lovecraft's actual work. It's a bit of an oversight on my part. Although yeah, he seems to be a curiously controversial figure these days. But yeah, it's something I should probably educate myself on. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, a bit of context for Triverse. So that chapter was published, I think, September 2021. And I've been putting out chapters every week since then. So it gives you a sense of the size of it. It's stupidly large. I didn't really intend for it to be quite as big as it's ended up being. And I'm very aware that like anyone who, like, if any of you liked listening to the Koth and you want to go and read the whole thing, like you can, it's all on the newsletter. It's on my Substack. You can read the whole thing for free, but navigating through like hundreds of Substack posts to read this thing is not ideal. So once I wrap up the serial, which is going to happen in a couple of weeks, my next job basically is to turn it into a paperback and an ebook. Probably several paperbacks, because otherwise it would be like the chunkiest, most ridiculous thing ever. So that's probably going to be a more convenient way to read the whole thing for anyone who's interested. Not that I'm trying to put you off, but you know, if you don't mind clicking through lots and lots of posts, then that's cool. Oh, there's if you take out a paid subscription, you can get an ebook, like a compilation of all the stories. But yeah, I don't want to feel like I'm encouraging that. I'm not very good at the upsell, basically. But yeah, you can go and read the whole thing for free. And yeah, it's just a lot of it, and you can read the whole thing from the start in order, like you would a novel, or you can sort of hop into different stories, which I think sort of mostly makes sense. But yeah, if you read it from the very start, then you're going to pick up on the background story threads that kind of build over time and become more and more prominent. It sort of begins fairly episodic, like individual episodes and different cases the police are taken on, and then goes from there. I mean, yeah, I should probably explain what it is. So it's like the concept is that portals were opened 200 years ago, connecting London to a kind of futuristic Earth and a fantasy world. This was me not making a decision on whether I was going to write fantasy, sci-fi, or crime fiction and just doing it all in one book, because that's how my brain apparently works. And then the main thrust of the story of the serial is this specialist team that was set up in the Met Police to deal with portal-related crimes. Hence, we got these two guys who are, police officers investigating this thing, then get caught up in this strange situation when they encounter this like dragon-like thing in a flat in the middle of London. And then each case is trying to figure out how a particular crime has taken place that usually involves portals in some way. Overall, the story is kind of it's about these three extremely different cultures colliding and what that does to society, and positives and negatives, and how different factions respond to it. And it's very much, an excuse to do lots of metaphorical examination of the modern society and life today, as is all, decent sci-fi. Yeah. And if you like crime or fantasy or sci-fi, or ideally all three of them, then you might dig it. Um, but yeah. But I think that is probably me done. Unless anyone has any particular questions about anything, I'll let you all prep for the next reading, which is over on CB Mason's. And then there's readings all the way through the day, which is very exciting. There's a whole bunch. I think a lot of these are going to be available afterwards. I'm going to post this up as a recording. So if you already missed like loads of ones yesterday, because I know I did, and a lot of it happened overnight, sort of UK time. So I'm hoping that all the authors are going to post up their readings so that I can catch up after the fact. And yeah, I'll be probably posting this as a recording on Monday. I think that's the regular newsletter. But yeah, okay. I will park it there. Have a lovely rest of your weekend. And thanks for tuning in. And yeah, any questions or interest in serial fiction or in Triverse, just come find me on Substack Notes or over on the newsletter. I'm always very happy to natter on about this stuff endlessly. So yeah, okay. Thanks again, and goodbye.